So binomial names. So in geckos, you would have the genus as the first name, and then the species as a second, and the genus has a capital, and the species has a lowercase. So historically, you can have lacerta gecko is like geckos, but that's not really used. No, that's not used anymore because lacerta is now used for like a genus of lizards, which isn't geckos, but lacerta used to also be used for lacerta salamandra, like which was a salamander, and lacerta tricorda. Well, we'll come on to tricorda, but you had it for like lacerta salamandra, lacerta gecko, and I think crocodilians could also come under that name. So lacerta salamandra was like used to name a salamander, which is interesting because salamanders are like more related to frogs than they are to geckos. But it's interesting how they had the same like first name. And I think crocodilians had that first like lacerta name as well. And then like stuff like tail abnormalities in lizards also could also have like names. So lacerta tricorda, that's like be like a lizard with like its tails in like I can branch into 3 bits. So try 3 and quarter tail. Yeah, so that's interesting. So gecko genus names end in, well, I've noticed that they sort of end in dactylus a lot, and apparently dactylus is a common ending for pterosaurs, like pterodactylus or ludodactylus. Yes, that's interesting. And I have some dactylus gecko genera listed here. I'm not sure if my pronunciation will be right for all of them, but yeah, so there's something. So you have Spherodactylus and Coleodactylus, which are relatives of the Gonatodes antlensis, which we're talking about. They're in the Spherodactylidae tribe. You have Carphodactylus, which they're like chameleon. They can be called chameleon geckos, but you also have like other geckos that can be called chameleon geckos, which is interesting. Yeah, and as well as that, you also have like different genuses of geckos that can be called fat-tailed geckos. So yeah, African fat-tailed gecko, and this interesting looking one called like Taylor's fat-tailed gecko belong to the genus Hemiliconix, which doesn't really end in dactylus, but a genus that does end in dactylus, which members can get referred to as fat-tailed geckos, is Diplodactylus, which is interesting. But African fat-tailed geckos are in like the family Eublepharidea, which is like a different family to Diplodactylus. And but what isn't Eublepharidea is the family Holodactylus, which is very closely related to African fat-tailed geckos. And the other member of African fat-tailed geckos genus, the tailless fat-tailed gecko. So that's some of the genuses. Yeah, Hoplodactylus, that's a New Zealand one. And then you had this like really large gecko, which was sort of Hoplodactylus delcoy. I think it's presumed extinct. But like, yeah, could be extinct, or presumed or whatever. But yeah, that was like, I think bigger than, it's like estimated to be bigger than, at least bigger than like lychees, like the New Caledonian giant geckos. So that's interesting. You have Lygodactylus, that's relative of like the giant day geckos and the members of that genus, Phelsuma. So Phelsuma and Lygodactylus are thought to have evolved from, well, they've been like, at least I like hypothesized or thought or whatever, to have evolved from a common ancestor that was diurnal, so like active during the day. We have Phylodactylus, I think that's the leaf-toed geckos. Yeah, I think, Joe, I'm just curious, is does every single leaf-toed gecko belong to that genus? Which I can't actually check that, because there is, you do get like leaf-toed geckos. Hopefully I said leaf-toed geckos, but not leaf-tailed geckos. Anyway, I'm talking about leaf-toed geckos, so I can look that up and see if the European member of the European leaf-toed gecko is in that genus. No, it's in this book, it's not classified in that genus, so that's interesting. But I think I'll just check to make sure, but I'm sure. Well, I'll just check. Yeah, they can like be called leaf-tail geckos, because like philo, I think that's leaf, and dactylus, dactyl can just mean like finger. So yeah, so that's interesting how the European leaf-toed gecko, according to that, isn't in the genus Phylodactylus. I'll have to check that, and then after the video, I'll leave a comment if it's now in the genus Phylodactylus or whatever. So now we move on to Rhacodactylus. That can be like Rhacodactylus leachianus, which is the New Caledonian giant gecko, like the lychee, which you may have heard of. Oh, and Lygodactylus. That, like, you may be familiar with Lygodactylus williamsi, like, which they can be blue. So yeah, that can be. I think I've heard them be referred to as electric blue day gecko. So that's Lygodactylus. And we've said Rhacodactylus, Spherodactylus. We've said that. And then Stenodactylus. That's another gecko one. So this is actually quite interesting how pterosaurs apparently can have like dactylus in their name, quite commonly apparently, and geckos can also have dactylus in their name. Seem to have it in their name like quite a lot in my experience. So basically that's interesting, because I did like a speculative evolution project Specota, and I just put this in full screen so you can see it a bit better. Yeah, so I did like Specota, like a project on like geckos evolving on it. So this is just like sort of like science fiction, but it's I try to base it on like biology and stuff like that. So it gets called speculative biology or speculative evolution, but it's sort of like imagining. So these four aren't real like current geckos, but this is just my project where it was sort of, and the geckos took to like a terraform planet. Yeah, and basically these gliding geckos, because some other animals went and took there, and so the niches may not have been, well, the niches may have been like left open, and there's sort of like some gliding geckos evolved powered flight. So that's interesting. So I have like one which I think is, they're called like neopterosaurs, these things, these like creatures, not well, yeah, these creatures. So I have like Tangerinodon was one name I called it. This orange one I called. So this has gone back like a year, nearly a year and a half, nearly 2 years, which I had just started this spec out. I have like one based on the Brevi, no, sorry, the Anuronathids, which were pterosaurs. The Tangerinodon sort of based on the, is it the cock of the rock, which is sort of like a bit like a bright orange bird, which had, I think it has like sort of a crest. Yeah, I think it does. And then we'll have like a filter feeding neopterosaur, which is sort of based on a pterosaur, which was also a filter feeder and sort of looked quite a lot like this. It sort of had like an upside down flamingo bill, and geckos don't have as many like cervical, so in like the neck region, cervical vertebrae as birds. They don't really have that many. So it, instead of tipping its head upside down, it just, like a flamingo would, it just had it like the other way up, which is why sort of like the beak sort of thing is like the opposite way up. But this is in the gecko. I don't know how many neck vertebrae pterosaurs had, which like the filter feeding pterosaur, I think its beak was also upside down compared to a flamingo. So there was a real pterosaur, not this one, but like a real one which looked a lot like this one, which had like an upside down sort of like beak compared to a flamingo. And then, yeah, so I'll leave it at that for them. But anyway, I will say that CM Kozman had like quite a similar ideas. So I think I did think of it independently to like other people, but yeah, I think when I've gone back and like looked if anyone else had the idea, I think some people may have had it before me, so I have to mention that. Yeah, but yeah, I think I did think of it independently.